Good morning, everybody. This morning we've got an iPad in that just has a cracked digitizer on it, and I don't know how well you can see it because the screen's on at the moment, but let me turn that back off, and then maybe you'll be able to. So right there in the corner, you can see it's cracked, and it's cracked pretty good. You know, we're seeing the light sensor there. So we're gonna have to go ahead and take this apart and get this digitizer pulled off. In order to do so, we'll have to pull the screen as well. So stay tuned if you want to see how to repair this 10th gen iPad. Okay guys, so to get started with, what we're going to do is turn on our hot pad here. We're going to make sure that we're set to tablet mode as well. There we go. So long press of the M takes it to tablet mode. And then what we'll do is take the iPad, we're just going to flip it over, and we're going to set it face down on this hot pad. Now the reason we do this is because it starts to loosen up the glue. Now the part that we're really concerned with is not going to be along the side with the volume keys here, because that's the right side of the iPad. We're going to try to loosen up the areas around here so we can open it up like a book. So the bottom, the top, and the left side. So I'm going to go ahead and flip this over, put it face down. And just let that warm up for a little bit. Okay, I'd say this has had pretty sufficient time to heat up. It's had about 2 minutes. You don't leave it on there too long. We don't want it to get too hot. What we're going to do now is go ahead and turn this off. We're going to flip this iPad over. And then, yeah, because we already started to get a little too hot. Yeah, but at least the screen rebounded from it, so that's a good thing. And then, so what we're going to do now is take this. I'm going to set it down on the back here, and we're going to try to start loosening up some of the adhesive along the inside of the screen here. So the beautiful part about this is that the heat really does a lot of the work for you. That's the wrong side. I don't need to do the volume button side. I need to do this side. The iPad gets you a little, confused because it turns just to orient whichever way you have it set up. So I'll come over here. I just don't want to be cutting along the wrong side for the adhesive on here. So we're just going to run this tool right along the inside here. We don't have to go too far in because the adhesive is not that far into the iPad. And just carefully drag that along. You're going to pull up just a hair as you go around the outside. And it slices like butter because that's honestly how simple this whole process is if you just use a little bit of heat on the screen. Now the broken parts are the hardest part. You gotta go around those a little bit, but otherwise it's gonna be a fairly straightforward fix here. So we're gonna come down the other direction since we started about halfway up on the frame. Just gonna continue doing our slight inside slice here, kind of pulling up as we go. Okay, we do have a broken shard down here in the corner. Now iPad says iPad needs to cool down before you can use it, and that's fine. It'll cool down as I work on it, and I'll be actually pulling the battery here soon too, so try to be very careful. We don't want to get any glass shards in the actual LCD because we are saving the LCD. That adds a significant cost to the repair if we end up having to replace the LCD as well. Alright, so now we're going to try to do the open it like a book thing now. And we should have a pretty good showing from it. There we go. We're a little stuck over here. But nothing that we can't take care of pretty much right away. And there you see the iPad LCD is fine. We just pulled the glass off. Everything's looking pretty good. So now that we've got the glass open, this is the more delicate part of the procedure, which requires pulling the actual LCD out without damaging anything else. So the hot pad's off. It's actually fairly cold now to the touch. It doesn't take much to get to that point. So now we have some Torx screws that we have to pull out of here, and I believe those are going to be a T4 if I'm not mistaken. We're going to have to transfer some parts from this digitizer over to our new one, but realistically what we need to do is get that battery pulled, and that way we're not damaging anything else. So let's get our screwdriver here. It's just got a Phillips bit on it. And I grab my T4 bit here. I believe that's usually what we end up using for this type of procedure. Indeed it is. Okay. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 screws along the LCD. We're going to pull those all the way out. Well, maybe. That's the camera in the middle there. Let's see if these pull out or if they just are captive inside this LCD here. Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't think those are captive. We're gonna set them in the little screw tray over here for the time being. I think they just have a little bit of adhesive stuck to them. Alright, and now the screw itself, or the screen itself, should not be glued in. It should be a fairly easy lift. I think we just lift from the top and the screen lifts right up. Of course, it looks like it might be held down on the other side, so let's double check that. Yep, and we've got several more Torx screws over here that we also have to pull. This is what's really interesting. I don't know how much you guys know about iPads and how they work, but or screens and how they work, but the digitizer itself is what controls the movement of the iPad. So if I have the screen held up like that, or I have the digitizer held up like this, you'll notice that stuff starts to move on the screen because this is what controls it all. So if we wanted to type in a number, we could, but yeah, I'm gonna leave that alone because I don't want to lock the poor girl out of her iPad. But anyway, I always found that pretty fascinating that there are two separate components, one built for detecting touch and the other just built to exist as a screen. Now this doesn't have any issues with adhesive because there's no we've already heated up the adhesive, and it's basically all stuck to the new digitizer, not the new digitizer. I'm trying to be really careful with pulling these out too. Again, got to be really delicate around this these LCD components, because you don't want to break anything. Now, because the screen was, well, there we go. That's my floor refinishing guy. So I'll be right back, guys. I'll pause my video here. Sorry about that, lovely people. My hardwood floor guy is here. Trying to get this hardwood floor done before Christmas. So that is what he is here for. Okay, so it looks like I got all the screws out initially. So what we're gonna do now is take this and pull up on it. Should allow us to stand the LCD upright. And that's pretty much how we want to pull on it. It looks like we're using a Phillips head for, so this is the battery connection right here, and then you've got your LCD connection right here. So we're going to pull the LCD, and then the digitizer connection is under here as well, but then there's a second connection here for the light sensor, it looks like. So we have to undo two covers. So we're going to do our Phillips 00 here to access that. So we can safely set aside this LCD. And if you guys hear some noise, it's just going to be my hardwood floor guy working. He's just getting set up, so. Okay. Go ahead and pull this cover, put that on the magnetic strip there, and then we're going to lift out the LCD. Set that aside. Are we all kinds of crooked now? Yeah, we probably are. Trying to keep this shot straight is a little difficult. So that digitizer cable is pulled. We're going to pull this here to pull the other cables out for it. One of those cables is your camera, which I pulled. I didn't need to, but I did. And then there's one last cover down here, it looks like. All right. Now, one of the most important things you can do with this is to keep your stuff in order. And so the nice thing about this is I have screw spots for every one of these things over here. And basically all we have to do now at this point is all these cables are loose, so there's going to be a little bit of adhesive left on this. So we just have to basically pull it off. Now, we could heat it up again. I don't really have any interest in reheating the iPad. So what I'm going to do is take my tool here. We're going to see if we can just slice through it here, because it should still be pretty pliable. And that's the reason you don't want to slice along that edge, is because the digitizer does have those cables that pull out. And so you got to be really careful on that. But now we've got the digitizer fully separated. So the next step really here is to go around and clean up the edges of all the adhesive and spare bits of glass that were left over from the previous screen or the previous digitizer. Now we can do that. What I'm going to choose to do here first is actually just pull the battery so we don't risk any damage to anything. We don't want a digitizer going bad or anything like that. So we're going to take the battery screw out, which that feels like it's kind of spring loaded there, but I don't think it is. At least it felt like it when it was coming out. And just going to pull up on the, we have to put something there to kind of keep that battery connection from reseating itself. They make it seem like it's really easy to do, but it's certainly not. Pulling the battery connection is not a simple thing, unfortunately. Just use this tool to get under there, and then I'll put my plastic separator under there. Oh, this thing's turning on again. That's not what we want. All right, so as I said, we're going to keep this under here. That basically will just keep the battery contact away from there. We're probably going to have to pull it at some point anyway to get stuff put back in, but for the time being, I'm going to pull this camera too so I don't run into any problems there. We're going to go ahead and start cleaning this up a little bit. So the way I like to do this is I actually have a little scraper somewhere around here. Keep having to put tools away. Well, I had a little scraper. Sorry guys, I've been trying to keep everything cleanish down here, which is kind of impossible. So bear with me as I look for my tool that I supposedly put away. Alright, so this here's my little scraper. Let's go around the edge, scrape off all the crap, all the old adhesive, and all the old glass pieces. Alrighty, time to go get the new digitizer, and we're gonna make sure our LCD stays clean. All right, everybody. So from this point on, I'm going to start voicing over so you can hear what I'm actually doing. Because I warned at some point later in the video that you would probably start hearing my voiceover because my wood floor guy was starting to sand, but it got worse earlier than expected. So this is just me trying to put the webcam back in, plug it in properly, and I just got a little confused because I thought I plugged it into the first spot or unplugged it from the first slot when it really goes into that second slot right there, the one on the right. And I'm trying to plug it into the one on the left, which is obviously not going to work. So let's see if we can get this moving a little quicker. Okay, so decided to speed this up here so that we can actually get moving on this and this doesn't end up being an hour-long video. So finally, I think I discovered that the camera plugs into the other slot, got that slotted successfully. Now what I'm talking about is transferring a light sensor and I believe one other item over. It might be Wi-Fi antenna. I don't really remember. No, it's a microphone. Sorry, light sensor and microphone live on the exact same. They live on the exact same like little cable that pops off of the old digitizer. So what I'm doing there is removing that digitizer or removing that component from the old digitizer, so I can add it to the new one. Unfortunately, the only glue I have is not a UV curing glue, and if it is, I don't know because I don't have a UV light to cure it a little faster. But I use a B7000 glue in order to, at least I think that's what it is. I'll be able to tell you here for sure in about 0.5 seconds here once the glue actually enters the frame. Basically, what I'm doing here, you can see I'm kind of smooshing things around. That's the glue drip there. And what I try to do is put that on there and push that into position. And I just want you to know, this is what you could be hearing if I wasn't voicing over right now. Isn't that terrible? Anyway, back to it here, guys. So there's some missed footage because I had to let that glue set. And I forgot to start. I thought I pressed record. Guess I didn't. But basically, plug those cables back in, and then I put the covers back on top of each of those slots there with the new digitizer. And woe is me for trying to get the screen plugged back in. I struggle bust with it here for a while. It's not as easy as they make it seem like it's going to be. It's kind of a huge pain in the butt, honestly. You got to get that connector in there just right, and then you can put that last cover on. And you can see I'm trying to get a side angle on it, but it's not the most intuitive. So what you're gonna see here is just me continuing to fuss with that till I get that stupid cable plugged in. That one is the bane of my existence, and maybe. Okay. Apparently I got it in, but I think I forgot to put that last cover on. So I'm trying to cover this with some isopropyl alcohol because I'm trying to clean up the actual LCD itself. And I'm using a microfiber cloth and being super gentle with it. Put the screws back in. So I put the screws back in a little prematurely. So realistically, what you want to do, and you'll see me do this in a little bit, is because I end up having to pull these screws back out, is you want to screw along the other side, the opposite end. Yeah, this is me realizing I never put the cover back on that. So I'm doing that really quick. So yeah, make sure you get your covers back on before you lay your screens down, folks. Don't want to learn the same lesson that I had to learn, which was, undo the screw, pull it back up, and then put the cover in. And apparently I was going to just leave my my little credit card swiper thing under there too, which, whatever. All right, cleaning up the LCD again because I had to touch it again. Just be gentle with the LCD, especially if you're in a situation like mine where you're having to save the LCD for future use. Because you don't want to end up with dirt under the screen. It doesn't look good, or fingerprints underneath the digitizer. That just doesn't look good either. So, like I said, you're going to
learn a lesson here that I had to learn, which is line your screws up on both sides of the screen, because it's not a science. It's not perfect. It doesn't align when you just put all the screws in one side and then you go to put them in the other. They don't line up perfectly. So you'll see me pull screws back out and have to put them back in because they're not going in quite right. And then I just get frustrated. So yeah, here we go. I start pulling the screws out, or at least loosening them up and pulling them out so I can get both sides of that LCD aligned. Now, if you're looking at the screen right now and you're seeing some flecks of stuff on there, you'd be correct. There's some stuff on there. But unfortunately, that's from where the glass broke, and it lived that way for a little bit. The iPad was originally bent, so whatever happened to it was definitely a more, we'll just say a severe damage to begin with. And I don't know how long that cracked digitizer lived on top of that LCD, but there was clearly some damage as a result to the LCD. Not enough to crack it, mind you, but enough to cause, that little imperfection there in the screen. I'm just cleaning up what little fingerprints I did make again. Got all the screws into the LCD. And now this next part gets a little tricky because you have to pull off the little strips for the Visa tape, but that Visa tape tends to run underneath those wire connections too. So you'll see me get understandably frustrated and try to find things to cut those little pieces of Visa tape with, so I don't end up accidentally damaging the LCD cables or the cables for the digitizer. And I do eventually get it all off. This video makes it look a lot easier than it was. But yeah, it's slicing and dicing that Visa tape cover underneath of those cables is definitely kind of a pain. There you go. And then all I have to do is pull off the last strip. Now, I do check this thing over. You can see right there, I'm checking for a little plastic cover on the underside because there's usually one there. Didn't find one, so I wiped it off, and then I decided to flip the new digitizer over and adhere it back to the screen. But lo and behold, you're going to figure out real quick here that I have to open this back up again. And you may or may not see that right now. You see how there's still those vertical lines through the screen? Like there's something under there. Yeah, you can see me visibly frustrated. Here we go. Here is the next part just for you guys.
I'm so annoyed. Because I basically have to redo my repair now. Slice through all the Visa tape that I just put down and redo it all. I'm very annoyed. This will be on tablet, not phone. Stop resetting every time I put you on here. I want the whole mat to get hot, not just a piece of it.
All right, guys, back to voicing this over as we wrap up the last of this repair here. We're nearing the finish line. Just a few minutes left. It's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. I thought I'd have to tear everything down and I'd have to retape everything because the adhesive wasn't as good. Turns out it really wasn't that bad. Once you just warm it up a little bit again, you just slide right through that Visa tape, and it didn't even damage the Visa tape because it hadn't actually fully adhered yet, because it takes a while for that to adhere to its opposing surface there. So I was able to simply slide the tool in here, as you're seeing, just carefully. I didn't want to take any chances of damaging any of that Visa tape, and basically redo what we did in the first place, which was pull that top cover off. So I didn't want the iPad to get too hot again. So I was really frustrated. So you can see my body language kind of reflects that. in some of these instances. So again, not trying to pull or tug. You don't want to be hard on the new digitizer just because you don't want the new digitizer to break on you. So, and in a situation like this, it's really hard for me to keep my calm when I'm mad about, like, I specifically checked for that stupid plastic on the underside and I didn't see anything. And so when I went to go use this iPad after the fact and I found that plastic under there. Oh man, talk about annoying. But yeah, even I have a hard time finding it even at this point. You got to use your fingernails and really kind of like dig around for it on there. You got to be careful too, because you, again, don't want to fingerprint up the back of the digitizer. It's just, there it is. That stupid piece of plastic. But we pull it off. And then all we really have to do is just set the digitizer back in place. Not sure what I'm saying here, and not sure that it really matters. I think I'm about to just do a quick cleanup along the edges where I maybe touched it with that little cutting knife there. Making sure that LCD stays nice and clean for the customer. And then you just drop that digitizer back down into place. And then push firmly along all the edges to make sure that it's starting to seal. And over the next 24 to 48 hours, that Visa tape should set up fully. But you can see now that the iPad is obviously working and back in functional condition once more. So again, had to wipe my fingerprints off the screen after this because of that. But so if you guys actually like this content and you want to see more, please smash that like button and subscribe to the channel, because I deal with all kinds of stuff, from PC repair to iPad screen fixes and iPad digitizer replacements and things like that, as you can see here. So it's not so bad. After the fact, it's a little annoying when you're doing it and things aren't going quite the way they should be, but you can see in the end that when I flip this up, it's all functional. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Have a great rest of your day.